beautiful, vast country of India. Thank you for your hospitality in welcoming me to your sacred land. And we must remember spiritual direction, the basis is about hospitality. It's finding the way to welcome Jesus into my heart and enabling Jesus to be welcomed into his heart. For my sharing with you, I desire to share in the context of prayer. For the process of all spiritual guidance is about how my prayer life fuels my life. Just as a car will not go forward if it has no petrol, so my spiritual life will not go forward without prayer and without deepening my relationship with the God who loves me so passionately. I will speak slowly, and once more I apologize for my strange accent. It is a mixture of New Zealand, British, I spent 2 years in England, Australian, Irish, and American. So during this sharing, I invite you to sit quietly and listen attentively. You can be today like the spiritual guide, to sit quietly and listen attentively. I invite you to enter your own prayerful space in your heart and mind as I share my prayer with you. Jesus says, go to your quiet room. This is your inner chamber, your inner room, where the lover speaks to his beloved. This is your cherished moment when we welcome the gift of the Spirit. And the Spirit knows me, accepts me, and desires all that is best for me. This morning, like us, you would have heard about the gospel of Martha and Mary. Spiritual direction, we can imagine Jesus as our director, welcoming these two women. But also we mustn't forget about Lazarus. Lazarus was also present in that family. So all these relationships Jesus was entering into, and he wants to enter into our relationship very deeply. Some words I say may touch you. Some ideas may come to you. Some feelings or emotions might move you. Please pay attention to these, quietly jot them down, or store them in your heart. For the process of spiritual direction is about paying attention to the way the Spirit moves in my life. The spiritual life is not about knowing a great deal. When I was a young novice in Australia in 1978, I used to run to the library to find all the spiritual books that dealt with themes of sanctity and holiness. For as a young sister, my whole focus was, how can I become a saint very quickly? How can I become a perfect Pauline? Maybe today I would have surfed the internet rather than a library. However, I learned very quickly that the spiritual life follows a very different rhythm. It's not a superficial overview. Rather than knowing a lot of information with the mind, it is more about knowing and savoring the little I know to deepen in my mind and heart. It is about tasting, savoring, and enjoying what we know. Here in this little capsule do we have our Pauline spirituality, to enlighten the mind, to touch the heart, and to empower my will to be there for mission. This gradual assimilation and integration will lead us to holiness, to a life which is always growing and developing. This is the process that will help you and I in the journey of our transformation. All of us want to be transfigured into Christ, to be Christified, but it is a journey. And, you know, when I was young, I traveled a lot. And I'm sure many of you have made your journey to come to the religious life today. But when we set out on a journey, we need to prepare ourselves, especially when we don't know fully where we are going. And the most beautiful thing is if we can find somebody who knows a little more than me about the journey. And that is what spiritual direction is about. It's about discovering a person who helps me in a relationship that will focus on where I am going. Let us begin our prayer. Dear Jesus, Divine Master, here I am before my sisters and brothers, my siblings, our younger family members who are setting out on this wonderful journey. I cannot see them all. I do not know them. But you, O Lord, know them. You know their love, their desires, their struggles. You know each one in the depths of his or her heart. Most of all, you know the beauty of each life, for you chose each of us. You know the journey they have taken till now in this process where they are. The tears each one has shed, the frustrations each has endured, the joys and laughter you have all tasted. Like me, they are all Pauline, Pauline in the marrow of our bones, sons and daughters of St. Paul, who in his zeal teaches us what spiritual direction is really all about. His first question to you, Jesus, when he was thrown off his horse on the Damascus journey was as follows. What shall I do, Lord? And this brilliant man who had great studies, he humbled himself and said, what shall I do now? And the most simple and clear answer Jesus gave him was this. Get up, go into the city, and there you will be told what to do. And this is particularly relevant for each of us Paulines, whether we are in the beginning of our religious life, whether we are in the middle, or whether we are near the end, for our trinal transfer. And the Lord sent Ananias to instruct him and baptize him. Lord, I want to be like St. Paul. Show me the way of his obedience, his willingness to learn, and his desire to listen to another. And at the same time, this Paul was sharing about his experience, what had happened. Lord, help me to understand my experience. And maybe as you and I think more deeply about Paul and Ananias, this is at the heart of why I enter this process of sharing and listening, so that the beauty of my vocation entrusted to me in baptism will come to its fullness, will be like a beautiful flower that flourishes, so that the beauty of the image of Jesus will reflect in each of our lives. And in the words of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, so that you and I can do something beautiful for God. So you hear the process. So we share, we listen, but the big process is mission, so that we can do. So the doing comes after. The doing is flowing out of this beautiful relationship with Jesus Christ. Dear Lord, in today's sharing, I want to keep it simple and clear. I would like each of my siblings to take away something of the beauty and the importance of the process of spiritual direction, spiritual conversation, spiritual guidance, spiritual accompaniment. No matter what terms we use, it's all about growing in that relationship with the Lord. Then the Lord has given me a person to guide me, a person who's gone on the journey, who can see the pitfalls. Your Spirit will open our ears and hearts to listen, just as you prepared the youthful heart of Mary to say her yes. May each of us have a willingness to say yes to your project of love. Even the young girl, like yourselves, Mary of Nazareth, was involved in a form of spiritual guidance. She prayed, she pondered and listened, and in her freedom, she said her yes. She, like each of us, was willing to have her life plans uprooted and changed dramatically. Jesus, Master and Lord, in these days of pandemic, coronavirus, COVID-19, an invisible yet powerful disease has changed the way we live. Each of us has added something to our lives. A small piece of cloth that covers our nose and our mouth. Like each of us, these masks come in all shapes and colors, patterns and styles. In our sharing today, let us imagine that the heart of this journey, this sharing of my spiritual life, my inner life, is the process of taking off my own personal mask, my journey of being transparent and true with another person. A mask can hide our beauty. When I remove it and show my face to another, just as I am I become true, authentic, and free. What are the masks that I don't like anybody to see in my life? What do my masks hide? Can I be true with others? Am I able to open who I am to someone who will help me be free? Lord, what about James, the young man whose life has impacted so deeply on each of us, from New Zealand to Africa, Nigeria, India, Japan? This one man changed the lives of all of us. We know his journey. We know that he was a spiritual director in the seminary when he was a young 17 or 18-year-old. He gave and received spiritual direction in his own life, and his first experience when he entered the seminary was very positive. Let us imagine this young man, this young seminarian James, speaking to each of us today. He's our Father. In the seminary of Alba, I found an environment of simple, profound, and active spirituality. I found a good spirit there, superiors, a confessor, and a spiritual director who was possessed of great virtue, zeal, and experience. I found a family atmosphere, serious study, and edifying companions. Don't we dream, you and I, that this is what our communities will be? Lord Jesus, you guided the path of James. Maybe his spiritual director also saw in him the great potential for doing something beautiful for God too. For after being ordained just 1 year, this young James Albrioni was appointed spiritual director of the seminarians in Alba. Let us hear once more James's own words. When I was transferred to Alba at the end of 1908 as a spiritual director of the seminary, I cultivated my own spiritual life. It prepared me for the Pauline family, and I continued giving direction in the seminary for 12 years. Lord, you also guided James and placed in his path a wise and holy man. Today we would say a wise and holy woman, Canon Chiesa. It was with Canon Chiesa that James consulted at all the key moments of the journeys of our congregation. Blessed James reminds each of us that a twofold humility and obedience guided him on his journey. James says, I had inspirations received from the Lord in the Eucharist, but these were confirmed by my spiritual director. So you see how our beloved founder also submitted himself to this opening of his heart to another and was guided. And Lord, maybe this lies also at the heart of my own journey. It takes humility to open myself. It takes humility to share what's going on in my heart, especially to open myself to another. Each of us in our daily Eucharistic encounter are reminded at that moment when James had his charismatic dream. In truth, Jesus Master said to me, "Do not be afraid, I am with you. From here I want to enlighten. Be sorry for sins." I spoke about it to my spiritual director, he says, mentioning the light which surrounded the figure of the Master. My spiritual director replied, "Keep calm, dream or otherwise. What you heard are holy words. Make them a practical program of life and light for yourself and for all the members." Thank you, Lord, for the way you guided James Albrioni. He reminds us that the real spiritual director is the Holy Spirit, and the human director, whether man or woman, helps me to uncover what the Spirit is saying. It is like returning to the image of the mask, to uncover, to reveal, to show the truth of who I am. Going to spiritual direction can be a bit like writing my own gospel, unveiling myself, having my own book of revelation. And maybe I also journal, jot things down, reminders, words that pierce my heart, ideas that come to me. In this journey of direction, of growth, accompaniment, let us make a memory manuscript so that we can see the wonders Jesus is doing in our lives. And in this way, it becomes our own abundantes divitiae. And today, Lord, in 2020, you give us one of the Jesuit sons of St. Ignatius of Loyola. It was he who, through his spiritual exercises, reawakened in the church the beauty and value of spiritual conversation. Pope Francis speaks clearly of this journey of spiritual accompaniment. Let us listen to his words from the encyclical The Joy of the Gospel. The church will have to initiate everyone, priests, religious and laity, into this art of accompaniment, which teaches us to remove our sandals before the sacred ground of another. Lord Jesus, you were the greatest director. We see it throughout the Gospels. You teach us how to enter the sacred ground of another. You teach us not only to take off our shoes, but to remove our masks, our defenses. This journey of honesty is not simply one that affirms and compliments me, saying you're wonderful. My director will also challenge me to become my best self, so that I can be the person who leaves my safe zone and frees me to be your missionary disciple. It's not easy, Lord, to bear my true self to another, to say what are my failures, my struggles, my jealousies, my angers, my fears. How easier it is to share my goodness and kindness, to present my best self. Yet, as a patient comes to a true doctor or an expert physician, In spiritual direction, I also have an opportunity to show my wounds, to expose them to the compassionate gaze of Jesus for healing, for treatment, and for cure. Just as an artist spends time and care on a beautiful work of art, so must I give attention to my greatest work of art, that of forming and allowing myself to be sculptured into a person who reflects the beauty of God's face, but mission to share this with others. Every art, and us who are disciples know, if we are involved in this liturgical ministry of art, requires practice, and we even make mistakes along the way. It involves, as Pope Francis reminds us, a constellation of virtues. A constellation, when we look in the stars, we see these beautiful groups of stars all spinning around. Virtues including charity, humility, kindness, courage, patience, and hope. Courage, how important we need courage to set out on the journey, because we will face obstacles on the way. I'm sure you've already faced them. I had mine. Each of us have our journey. But each obstacle we meet, when we face it, it enables us to be stronger. It enables us to be free. This is our Christian, Catholic, and Pauline mission, and the goal of why we are here, nothing else. And Lord, just as you called Blessed James, you also called Thekla, the great daughter of St. Paul. Her secret of sanctity was outlined by James. She listened, she obeyed, she lived with zeal. Blessed James said about her, now this is particularly for you daughters of St. Paul, if all the daughters, each one of you, possess the prayer and humility of Prima Maestra, they would always enjoy greater interior and exterior peace, even in the midst of troubles, which are certainly never lacking in life, and which increase the more we try to be good. Interesting. The more we try to be good, the more that spirit is going to try to prevent us. And when I talk about the spirit, you know what I mean. There's the good spirit that calls us to be the best person we can be, and the bad spirit who calls us to live in the hole, to close myself. The temptations grow in proportion to our age, in proportion to our sufferings, and the Lord sends these to us so as we can increase in holiness. The piety of Mother Thekla was known to everyone, not only because of how much she prays and her fidelity to the practice of prayer, but above all, because of the quality of her prayer life. How else could Blessed James Albrioni know all about Mother Thekla Merlo unless she bared her inner life with him? And Lord, when you encountered Matthew at the table of the tax collector, you looked into his soul and you knew he could change. He had potential. And each of us, when we come into the congregation, we have people, our mistresses, our formators, the sisters, brothers we live with. They see us but they can see also our potential. Help those who guide me to see my possibilities, added Canon Chiesa when he saw the young Tekla pass by. He said, "She is a chosen soul." And at that time, he did not know her as he did later. Lord, each of us is your chosen soul, chosen from all eternity to belong to this family. May we too know how to receive and transmit this rich and beautiful charism. Today, dear Lord, I thank you for another chosen Pauline soul who helps us, particularly disciples, pious disciples, trace the steps of holiness. Our own sister, Scholastica Rivata. She was known as a woman of profound communication with Jesus. She knew the art of attraction and understood how to foster growth in all hearts. Her life speaks to us more than through her words. She speaks more by her silence, her presence, and her smile than by exhortations, more through her serene and penetrating gaze, more through adoration of you. Lord, your smile continues to come to us through the face of Mother Scholastica. She was not simply one who was guided by the founder. She was one who guided. So you can see the fruits of spiritual direction here. If I'm guided by another, my mission also is to transmit and to share the beauty of what I have received. From this ardent woman, I am reminded that if I have the grace to be guided by others and shown the way, then Lord, I must transmit this. I'm perhaps not by words, but by example, by my presence in my community life. For if I spend hours in spiritual direction, but it doesn't change my life, something is not going correctly. Often, Lord, the most powerful and fruitful guidance is not through words, but through the example of a life fully dedicated to you. Teach each of us this way. And I want to say a word here about the desert of our transformation. Mother Scholastica, as did all our Pauline brothers and sisters, are called to cross this desert, the desert of transformation. From her initial choice, which caused her to exclaim, "Lord, you alone are enough for me," to the consummation of her offering, she lived in joy in spite of the sorrow. Even in the most difficult trials, she chose not to be sad, nor to complain, nor to consider herself a victim. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes if things are not going correctly for me, if I'm living with somebody who's difficult or I think is making my life difficult, it's very easy to get sorry for myself, to feel myself as being a victim. When we journey in our spiritual direction and recognize what's happening in my life, in sharing with another, I can release this burden. Scholastica allowed the vitality of Christian joy to fill her heart and radiate from her face. The secret of this lasting joy, the mature gift of the Holy Spirit, the fruit, lies in her life offered for the lives of others. It's wonderful to contemplate the beauty of the life of this woman consecrated to God. It has an enduring value because it draws from the Eucharist light and clothes her with simplicity. Am I still attracted by this gospel joy today? Lord Jesus, you also spent time in the desert. When I share the desert with you, it may sometimes be the desert of loneliness, of struggles, of temptations, of my failure to be the person I desire to be, my challenges in community, my suffering when I think of my family and the home I left behind, my challenge to live with persons that are so different from me, my inability to be the person you want me to be, my inability to welcome those I do not find it easy to live with, my inner need for healing and affection. There are many others. These are some I've experienced. You have your own. And when you share them, they make it seem it's not me alone. I'm not alone here. And the truth about spiritual direction is I make myself real when I tell the truth of who I am. It's not important to share the truth of who I am with everybody. I'd love least if I can share it with one person who will guide me on my journey. In the prayerful, safe, and sacred space of spiritual guidance, God gives us a golden opportunity to reveal myself in all my loveliness. Spiritual direction is not only about problems, it's about focusing on this Jesus who I want to know and come to love more deeply. I come with all my faults, and as I do, I come to know myself more deeply. And as I know, it's a fact in our life. The more I come to know myself, the more I come to accept myself as I am, the more I will be able to accept others. You, O God, are the God of surprise, and in the act of sharing, I come to a deeper discernment of your plans for me. I learn where the pitfalls are, and especially the way that I resist your voice, calling me to love more deeply and to become a freer person. So you notice there I mentioned the word discernment. Discernment is about, I'm sure those of you, I'm sure many of our Pauline brothers too, you've worked in the kitchen, and you have the sifter that sorts out things. Direction helps me in the sifting out of what is God's voice, what is my voice, and what is the voice of the bad spirit. I do not desire that others decide for me. So we can't hand our responsibility. You and I, we are all adults. We're no longer children in the spiritual life. A director is there to guide me to freely choose the way of truth and holiness, no matter what it costs. And as I learn to share, listening to my own voice and my own story, the person who guides me will be attentive to the particular way in which God is guiding me. There's a truth here about sharing. When we share who we are with another, it's challenging sometimes, but we learn to see ourselves, we learn to hear ourselves. And then we can also think, well, and we reflect on what we've said. So it gives us a forum, somebody listening, not only listening, but also responding to the person I am. For some, it may be a more gentle way that God deals with me. For others, more direct. Just as one size does not fit everyone, so in his loving mercy, us all the same. He treats each of us differently. It's sort of tailor-made. It's also good to remember that when we go to spiritual direction or spiritual guidance, no matter what it's called, there are not simply two persons involved, myself and the person accompanying me. There's me, there's the person, but the third person is always present, the Holy Spirit. And also the third person is the forgotten person of the Trinity. The Holy Spirit, they say, is like the little sister of the Trinity. And so in the journey of spiritual direction, I invite each of us to invoke the Spirit, because the Spirit will teach us. It's not the spiritual director that's the real guide. He or she is the instrument God has placed there, so the channel of the Spirit can come more deeply into my soul. In his gentle way, he will help me to unmask those areas of my life which need healing, which need affirmation or reconciliation. Reconciliation, I'm not talking here about confession, the sacrament, but how I need to be whole in myself, in my mind, in my thoughts, in my heart, even maybe in my body, discipline. He will also guide me to trust the process and to name my resistances. And sometimes, Lord, I'm not sure of what I'm going to say, how to begin. Let me begin slowly with a prayer, with an admission of exactly where I am today. I'm feeling afraid, say it. I'm feeling nervous, say it. I'm feeling confident, say it. Name my experience. And in my own experience, if I go to spiritual direction or start sharing with somebody, and I think I've got nothing to say, as I sit there, something else has uncovered. And maybe it's something I do not want to share. My process would be, I always get someone to share what they least want to share, because that is where the Spirit is moving. Lord, help each of us to be aware, to pay attention to the ways in which we resist the call to holiness and we resist the call to change. Much as each of us desires to change, no matter what age, we have to admit change is not easy. Remember the gospel where Jesus went upon the man who had been paralyzed for many years, and he said, "Do you want to be healed? Do I want to be healed?" Because if I say yes, I take the responsibility of what changes I need. But it's a gentle process. It's not something, I always say the process of spiritual direction differs from counseling. Counseling deals more with problems that I meet. Spiritual direction is like the great openness of where the Spirit is guiding me. What do I talk about when I go? What are the important areas to discuss? First of all, my prayer life. How does the Lord Jesus or the Father or the Spirit, how do they appear to me in prayer? How do I feel towards them? How do I pray? Do I sense they are listening to me? What are the motivating forces in my life? What are the motives that influence my day-to-day decisions? Will I do this? Will I do that? Am I driven by my needs and impulses? Or am I drawn by the Lord? This is an important thing. Am I doing things because I have to, or because I've been told to do it? And if I don't do it, what will they say? Or am I cultivating my heart so that I'm doing it freely? Am I growing in love? Who or what is my first love? Are there undisciplined affections in my heart? So in the beginning of the journey, there are areas which seem to loom very large, sometimes like a mountain. But if we journey forward, it's possible to climb that mountain. But we need to climb, we need to do the discipline of the journey. What are my tendencies and habits? Am I getting into negative ways of thinking? Remember, Jesus in my mind. Am I getting into negative ways of talking, criticizing? Jesus in my words. And how is my heart? Is it leaning towards something which it shouldn't be leaning towards? Is it disciplined in its affection? How about the negativity in my life? When I wake up in the morning, what is my general feeling? How do I feel about facing the new day? These are things we must reflect on. These are areas just in the day-to-day that we can explore. So we can channel all our energies into the service of the Lord. What is my idea of consecrated life? Am I finding the journey difficult? Am I finding the programs I'm getting involved in each day, are they weighing me down? Community living. Am I learning to love? Am I learning to see my sister as my sister? Am I learning to see my brother as my brother? Am I growing in sharing? Am I judging? Now remember again, we mentioned the sacrament of reconciliation and the process of spiritual direction. For instance, I can bring to the sacrament specific areas, but when I go to spiritual direction, I can bring what's really beneath these areas. Why do I find I judge? Am I feeling, is my self-esteem very low? What is my image of myself? Am I loving myself? Am I learning to see Jesus as loving me? Can I see others as being loved by him also? Maybe in one of our drier moments, these desert moments we spoke about, I could take one of our Pauline prayers. Jesus, Master, sanctify my mind, increase my faith. And I could gradually go through each phrase, stopping where I am moved and sharing from my personal experience. And I'd like to share with you one of my favorite prayers I had when I was a teenager. And I often come back to it because the prayers of our youth are often the ones that have formed us, that continue to touch us, that are part of this beautiful spiritual memory. Keep me, O God, from all pettiness. Let me be big in thought, word, and deed. Let me be done, finished with finding fault in myself and finding fault in others. Let me leave all self-seeking. May I put away all pretensions and meet each other face to face, without self-pity and without judging. May I never be hasty in judging, but always be generous. Let me take time for all things and make me grow calm, serene, and gentle with others. Teach me to put into action my good desires, my better self, to be straightforward and living with no fear. Grant that I may realize that it is the little things of life that create division and difference, that in the big things of life we are one. So maybe your experience might be, you might have a little disagreement in community, but something happens and we all get together and feast. We have a party, as is our Pauline charism. We know how to enjoy. When we do this, when we look at the big things, we are united. And it's good to go back to that. So as I continue in the journey, how do I know I'm making progress? Because often nobody's going to say, oh, you're becoming holier or you're becoming a better person. But how do I know in my own heart? And one of the most, we call the litmus test, is some of the following questions. It's in the concrete circumstances, the reality, not in the ideal. So Lord, help me face some of the following questions. Is my prayer life becoming more loving and active? Am I looking forward to going to pray? Am I nurturing my heart so I realize this is the central moment of my day when I encounter the Master? Even if I do not feel it, I know he wants, I may have an appointment, I have a date with him. Am I living with greater joy and serenity? You know, joy in the spiritual life is a gift. It's not something we create ourselves. We can have a sense of deep inner joy even if things are not going too good. So this is the joy we want to cultivate, a deep joy of knowing that I am loved, that I love and I am loved. Am I growing in my community service, contributing to unity rather than division? Am I gradually, now I don't say it happens overnight, it didn't with me, and I still have struggles. Am I gradually leaving my secure comfort zone, willing to leave my own style of things for others and for the sake of my mission, our mission? Am I growing in generosity and less self-focused? And I might remind you, I'm now 66 and I'm still struggling with some of these things because I know this is the journey. We never arrive, but we keep working on areas. And this is a very important one. Do I live with a spirit of humility and gratitude? You know, a humble heart is a grateful heart. Not just someone who says thank you, but someone who's able to say thank you spontaneously, freely, because the person knows that everything we receive is a gift. Am I growing in the spirit of discipline and ongoing discernment of God's word daily? So to pray can be a discipline. To pray can be a burden. To pray can be a journey. So I face my prayer life. I might get distracted. Bring it to the Lord. Is my journey of spiritual direction guiding me to be more God-centered? Or am I quite happy just to tell my story, to focus on myself? And the danger is, am I dwelling on myself in a very self-centered way? And each of us in this journey has our own role. The director, the person we share with, is wanting to respect my uniqueness. He wants to listen, he or she listens with total attention to both my verbal and non-verbal communication. And we know that 90% of our communication is not with our words, it's with our non-verbal, it's with our life. I don't want to share too much, but I lived in a community once with a sister, and she used to always bang the door. And I knew that when she banged the door, she was angry. But when she was peaceful, she never banged the door. So this was her way of non-verbal. So we each do it. And I mean, we must smile sometimes at the way we live our non-verbal. Especially in a community, we may not really like the person or want to go to talk to a sister or a brother. So we don't want to admit it to ourselves, but we really quietly ignore her, but in a way which only she will understand. And I've done that, and I've had it done to me. So going to spiritual direction will really help us uncover the ways in which my love is not perfect or my love yet needs to grow. A spiritual guide will also help me discern. He won't discern for me. We're no longer children. I don't know what ages you are, but because you're in the Pauline family, you're already done a journey. You already know how to listen to the voice of the Lord. But we need sometimes help to discover what the voice is saying, what Jesus is calling to me. A spiritual director also doesn't just listen. He might be there to help me clarify what's unclear. If he asks me questions, it's not out of curiosity, but to help free me. And often a spiritual director in the beginning, it's a bit like a relationship between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. In the beginning, everything's beautiful. But after a while, things can get a bit sticky and difficult because we challenge each other. So a spiritual director can challenge me, but to challenge me not to hurt or to harm, but to call me to be the best person I can be. No matter how far we are in the journey, we're always seeking to go the extra mile. He helps me also, or she helps me, to integrate my prayer life with my own life. He helps me also, and this is a very, very important aspect, he helps me to guard against delusions. You know, the way I can be deluded, tricked in the spiritual life. Because when we journey, as we know from our Pauline saints, when we want to go towards the Lord, there's going to be resistances that want to hold us back. So our spiritual director will help us gradually uncover these resistances and these delusions, because keeping quiet, keeping gentle, and it's a journey. And also, spiritual direction is very confidential. So I think now, oh my goodness, it says here 1:10, so I've gone on longer than I expected.